Hello, everyone. My name is Nika Shakastaban, and I'm your North Region representative. So I represent Regions 1, 2, and 7, and I'm from Lakeside High School.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiara Chi. I am your Central Region representative. I represent Regions 3 and 6, and I am from Newton College and Career Academy.
And my name is Sahil Sood. I'm your Southern Region representative, so I represent Regions 4 and 5, and I'm from Lambert High School.
Today, we are going to be talking to you all about leveling up community service. As an officer in your chapter, community service is a very important part of your role. Today, we will be talking about the basics of community service, what it is and why it's important. We'll also be showing how to apply this to your own chapter. And finally, we'll end with how you can actually apply this yourself.
So during in-person OJS, we had a fun little icebreaker, but instead of taking you guys through the icebreaker virtually, here are the instructions, and you guys can take this icebreaker home to your chapters and execute it yourselves if you want to. So we're gonna head right into the basics of service. Basically, what is community service and why is it important? So what is community service? I'm sure that many of you have probably participated in some kind of community service opportunity in the past, or you have a general idea of what community service is. But what really lies below the surface of service? So really quickly, I just want you to kind of think about this if this was you last year. So did you have low membership last year, low engagement, and overall low productivity or inactivity in your officer team or in your chapter? If you did, that is perfectly okay. Last year, we couldn't do as much as we wanted to do, especially with the pandemic. We couldn't do as many in-person things. And it's okay if this was you before the pandemic as well. With community service, you can improve all of these things, but really quickly, we're going to talk about what community service actually is. So, the dictionary definition of community service is voluntary work intended to help people in a particular area. Now, if you guys decide to do the icebreaker I previously mentioned, you'll find that you have two groups helping each other. Now, that's how I like to think of community service, a group helping a group with a need and an ability that helps another group with a need and ability, and they both kind of service each other in that way. So I like to think about it, a group helping a group or a community helping a community. Now, some examples of community service can be picking up trash at a lake, planting trees around your city, or volunteering with a local organization. And I'm sure all of you are pretty familiar with those examples of community service. But I just want to remind you that this is not all what community service is. It's not just about picking up trash or planting trees. There is so much more to community service, and it's really about recognizing what abilities you have that can service the community that you're trying to help. So really quickly, I want you guys to just kind of think about this. Which service project do you think was more impactful? So in scenario one, we have individuals writing letters to the elderly home in their community. In scenario two, we have individuals helping build a library in a third world city. Now, during OJS, we had some very mixed opinions. In scenario one and scenario two, a lot of people said that both of them are equal. Some people pick scenario two and some people pick scenario one, but you can think about which scenario was more impactful by yourself. So with new information, now we have some new information. So both scenarios were actually carried out. In scenario one outcome, the elderlies extremely enjoyed the letters and the overall happiness for all the elders in the elderly home raised. Now that's amazing. However, in scenario two, due to the low literacy rates in the city, the library eventually became abandoned and collapsed, causing pollution in the city. Now, we had the majority of people pick scenario two, and you probably picked scenario two. So I want you to kind of think about why scenario two failed, why do you think scenario one did good? So what it really comes down to with scenario two and scenario one had a smaller amount of people and effort, but a larger impact. Scenario two had a larger amount of effort and people, but a smaller impact. And you guys have probably thought about it yourselves and came to your own conclusions. But what it really comes down to is in scenario one, they knew that they didn't have the money or time or people to build something as extravagant as a library for a city in need. But what they did know is that they had a small group of people with the passion to impact a community. So they got together and wrote those letters and sent them to a community that they knew that they could help. In scenario two, they did have the facilities to do something as extravagant as build a library, but they kind of just assumed that building a library in a random third world city would help the people in the city. And that wasn't true. They didn't do their research. They didn't think about the literacy rates. They didn't think about following up with that project. So what I really want you guys to take away from this is when you're doing community service, you have to know what abilities you have that will benefit your community the most. So now we're going to talk about why community service is important with Sawhill.
So why community service is important seems like a very simple question. We all know why community service is important. It helps better the quality of life for people. It helps give back to the community, and it helps to make people happy. But this question is a little bit deeper than that. This question is more relating to why we should care about service, because the intent behind your community service is very important. If you don't care about the service that you're doing, you're better off not doing it at all. And the reason for that is because you're more likely to put your best foot forward and give a lot of effort when you're passionate about the service project that you're pursuing. And you're a lot less likely to do a good job helping the person on the receiving end of the service if you are not passionate about the service that you're doing and you're simply doing it to garner volunteer hours or to pad a college resume. So you should use your own passions and emotions as a guide to which kind of service projects you want to pursue, because you truly should care about what type of service you're doing. With determining why community service is important, the first thing to do is to find your purpose within the community. And that starts with having the intent to help. You want to walk into a community service opportunity wanting to help the people and wanting to help the beneficiaries in any way possible. If you walk in with a mindset that you want to garner as many hours as possible, you're not going to be able to really make an impact on the people on the receiving end, and you're not going to be able to leave an impact within your community. To find your best purpose, you should find what's important to you and your community. And the best way to do that is to start as local as possible, maybe even your neighborhood. For example, if there's a neighborhood park in your area that needs a little bit of fixing up, maybe it has some trash and some rusted swings, you could get a group of friends together and help rebuild the park, replace the swings and clean up the trash so that the younger kids that play there are able to better enjoy their time there. Making those small impacts on your community is really important to finding a good purpose within your community. And you should always start with small steps and work your way up. Because a lot of the time, especially with children who are in high school, they tend to want to form large multinational nonprofits that do a lot of things in many different countries. But a lot of the time, those nonprofits don't end up doing anything simply because they don't have the foundation necessary they don't have the success at the local level, and they don't have that foundation to be successful at the national or international level. So starting with small steps gives you the foundation to scale your service projects up to the state, the national, or even the international level. And if that's not what you want to do, it's still self-gratifying in and of itself, because you're able to see people in your local community, your peers, your younger siblings, all of them, be impacted by the service projects that you pursue. Another really important thing to consider if you can't seem to find your purpose in the community is what kind of impact you want to leave. With community service, there's two types of impacts: tangible and abstract impacts. Tangible impacts are physical, concrete impacts, ones that you can see the effects of. For example, saving lives with community service or cleaning up trash in a park. You can physically see those effects. Whereas abstract impacts Or more like Kiara's earlier example about writing letters to an elderly nursing home. That helps put smiles on people's faces, and you can't really quantify or see the physical effects of that, but it's still a very important aspect of community service. Tangible and abstract impacts, they're both equally important and they both have their own roles within the community. So you should pick which impact you want to pursue based on your own passions and your intent to help. Once you've selected a type of impact, you should make sure that your impact is a long-term sustainable impact. And what I mean by that is that the effects of your service should continue on for months or even years after you do the service itself. For example, when you clean up a river, you're helping with better harvests for the crops that use that water, better drinking water for the people in the area, a place for the younger children to play in the river, better life expectancy for the fish so there's more food, things like that. So there's a plethora of spillover effects from just cleaning up the river. And that river is now it's going to take a long time for that river to get polluted to the same extent that it previously was. So the impact that you leave is able to help preserve the river for months or even years to come, so that maybe your younger siblings or people in a younger generation can enjoy the benefits of a clean river. Finally, if you can't seem to find any community service opportunities near you, don't be afraid to take the initiative and create an opportunity yourself. For example, if you see a specific niche in your community that you need to help with, you can get a group of friends together to maybe fix up a local park and do a community service project there. Or if you're feeling really bold, you could form a local nonprofit organization to raise awareness about a specific issue in your community and to garner funds to help implement your community service project, as well as get support and volunteers to carry out your community service project itself. It should all be about the kind of legacy that you want to leave on your community and what type of impact you want to pursue with your community service.
Now that we've talked about what community service is and why it's important, what's next? Now we have to take action. How exactly can you apply community service to your community? Community service takes a lot of time and effort to plan. So if that's the case, how can we do this? Before we get into that, I'd like to tell you all a little story. So down in the corner, you can see two people, Sally, who is the president of a local chapter, and Tom, who is the vice president. In July, Sally and Tom sat together and they decided that in October, they were going to have their chapter volunteer at a local food bank. They decided on that day, and that was that. August rolled around and Tom asked Sally, shouldn't we contact the food bank about us going to volunteer? Sally said, that's months in advance. We don't have to worry about that. Then September rolled around and Tom asked, Sally, we haven't even told our members or our advisor about this. Shouldn't we say something? Sally said, it's still a month away. We still have weeks to figure it out. Then October came around, and I'll let you guess how that story ended. Keeping that in mind, there are a few components to planning community service to keep in mind. There are 5 W's to think about. There's who, what, when, where, and why. What are we planning on doing? Why are we doing it? When and where is it going to take place, and who is involved? Going back to the story with Sally and Tom, think about these 5 W's. Were they able to decide what they were planning on doing? In a way, yes. They decided that they were going to go work at the local food bank. They should have been more specific in what they were saying so that everyone understood the full scope of what was happening. They could have said, we are planning on working at the local food bank by helping to package meals to be delivered. Did they decide why they were planning on doing it? They didn't necessarily have a specific purpose behind it, which kind of left them from being motivated in their service. Did they decide where or when they should do this? In a way, yes, but it was very vague. They said that they would in October, and they said they would at the food bank. They could have improved this by being more specific and saying, we will volunteer on October 15th at 3 p.m., for example. They could have said where by maybe specifying a specific location of the food bank. Did they decide who was involved? They did. They said that they would have their chapter volunteer, but they could have let their chapter know and the food bank know that they were involved in it so that their original plan wouldn't have led to a failure. Along with this, you will oftentimes have to come in contact with other people in order to acquire this community service. Because of this, etiquette is very crucial. One way to contact people is through emails. When contacting people through emails, it is important to make sure that you are addressing those people with their appropriate titles, whether it be doctor, ma'am, Mr., anything like that. You also want to make sure you're upholding this etiquette in virtual meetings such as Zoom. When you do this, you want to make sure that your microphone is off when you are not speaking and your camera is on at all times. Along with that, in-person etiquette is also very important. When you greet someone, you want to make sure you give them a firm handshake and you're making eye contact with them. You also want to make sure to speak up so that they can hear you. Besides the components to planning community service, it's also important to keep in mind how to get members involved. One way is through healthcare-oriented events. We are an organization for future health professionals, after all. Find ways that your members can hone in the skills that they've acquired through healthcare. Some good examples of this would be volunteering at a hospital or maybe at a rehabilitation center. Another good way is through incentives. Many schools actually offer incentives such as credits for HOSA or credits to be transferred to other honor societies. These will allow your members to have a reason to be there. Finally, you should always make events fun and interesting. You want to make sure that when your members come to a meeting, they're excited about coming to the next one. You want to make sure that they are engaged and ready and they enjoy what they're doing so that they would be ready to go to whatever event comes next. Finally, as soon as you figured these previous components out, you want to understand how to find this actual community service. One way is through networking with other organizations. Contacting other CTSOs is a great example. Let's say that your school has a local or has their own FBLA chapter who's holding a community service project. Collaborating with them on their community service project would be a very good idea to uphold this community service. It's also important to stay vigilant. You want to make sure that you are looking out on the news or maybe even at announcements at school to understand and find these different community service opportunities. You can also research. When you sit down with your school officers for the very first time, come up with a list of all the different opportunities in your area. Once you've done that, you can just go back to that list throughout the year and check off each of those opportunities. So right from the start, you are set for the whole year. Finally, you can always come up with your own opportunities. HOSA is very helpful in this because it has so much that surrounds it. So it is very easy to come up with your own community service project. One example could be blood drives, and another very good idea is through HOSA's National Service Project.
For those of you that don't know, HOSA's National Service Project for the past few years has been Be the Match, a nonprofit organization that matches donors with receivers for bone marrow transplants for people that have cancer. And they have already saved over 117,000 lives. HOSA's role in this is where you all, the officers and members, help raise money within your chapters for Be the Match. That money is then given to National HOSA, who donates 100% of the proceeds to Be the Match. And in the years that we've been helping fund Be the Match, HOSA's money has helped fund over 10,000 transplants. Now, in order to implement these fundraisers in your chapters, there's a few easy methods that you can use. The first being a raffle. Raffles are fairly self-explanatory. You raffle off some sort of prize, a gift card, a console, and you use the money that you get from selling the tickets as your revenue to give to HOSA, which will then be donated to Be the Match. Another really good way to get involved is through choice boards, which is one of my personal favorites because it gets the officers involved. For those of you that don't know what a choice board is essentially when, if a member donates a certain amount of money to Be the Match, they get to pick from a variety of choices for fun and wacky activities that the advisors and officers can do. For example, let's say the member donates $10, maybe they have the choice to pie an officer in the face. If they donate $50, maybe they have the opportunity to have the advisors dress up like cheerleaders and cheer in the bus lanes. If they donate $100, maybe the advisors will do a basketball 1v1 in high heels. These are just some examples of fun, wacky activities that your members can look forward to at the end of meetings because they want to see them, and it helps the officers bond together and participate in these fun, wacky activities, as well as providing an incentive for members to donate because they want to see these activities happen. Finally, Nika touched on this a little bit earlier, but a credit system is really good for helping to provide HOSA members with a sense of purpose and a reason to help donate to Be the Match. So points or credits within your HOSA chapter or hours for National Honor Societies are really good incentives for members to find their sense of purpose within HOSA to donate to Be the Match. With that, this is our final activity that we did at the in-person version of Officer Jumpstart, which you are welcome to do within your own chapters. The instructions are here, and the premise of the activity is simply to plan out a month of community service for your chapter using the skills that you learned today during the workshop. Try to incorporate elements like social media, Be the Match, and blood drives into your calendar, and try to get as creative as possible with your community service ideas to attract members and make sure that they are interested in what you're hosting. Finally, for the holiday themed months, try to use the holidays to your advantage as a way to theme your community service projects to get more members to come, because holiday themed events typically attract more members. After you've done that activity, there are a few final things that we want you to keep in mind, and we hope that you really enjoyed applying community service into your chapter and into your community. If you ever want to request a chapter visit from any of the state officers, our chapter visit request form is at www.georgiahosa.org/chapter visit, where you can fill out your name, email, and what you want us there for. And we would be happy to, the state officers would be happy to come to your chapter in person or virtually to speak with the members and give an impactful experience on whatever it is that you would like us to speak about. In addition, we strongly urge that you follow us on Instagram at Georgia HOSA, because we're constantly posting updates, reminders, deadlines, events that we're doing, and we're constantly featuring members on the story of Georgia HOSA. So if you want a chance to be featured and you don't want to miss any of the events that we have, fun events that we have in store, we strongly urge that you follow us on Instagram. Finally, this is the personal contact information for the region representatives. Again, Nika represents regions 1, 2, and 7. Kiara represents regions 3 and 6, and I represent regions 4 and 5. So if you ever need to reach out to us, use our Instagrams or emails to reach out. In the left corner is the QR code for our Slack, which is a brand new thing that we're premiering this year. The Slack is a way for you to communicate directly with other members across the state and within your regions about things that are happening in Georgia HOSA and upcoming events we have, as well as a way for you to communicate directly with the state officers about any questions that you have about upcoming events. In the bottom right corner is a QR code to our card, another new thing that we have this year, which is the one-stop shop for all links Georgia HOSA related. If you're looking for a link, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be on the card. We're constantly updating it with webinar links, registration links, all of that. So I recommend that you save this link. The URL is also georgiahosa.card.co. Finally, if you're receiving a worksheet, for those of you that have the worksheets with you, there is a volunteer log sheet at the front of the worksheet packet, which is a way for you to get jump started with your community service in your chapter. So you can make copies of that worksheet if you feel necessary to help your chapter track their community service projects and the hours that they log in them. Thank you all for listening to our workshop. We hope you truly learned something new about community service, and we hope that you implement these, the lessons that you learned today in your home chapters to help make a real impact on your community.